going to talk about content, so what you're going to put on social media, a little bit about getting started if there's people who haven't really got going. I'm going to talk about scheduling posts. So if you're taking part in Open Studios, you might not want to be doing lots of posts during the event if you're busy doing other things, so you can schedule them. And also about lives, which is what Zoe was just talking about before. We're sharing this live on Facebook. I'll be encouraging you to think about lives, even if you haven't maybe thought about them before. So, some of the most widely used social platforms I'm sure you've heard of are Facebook, which has the most active users of all the social media platforms, and quite a wide range of users. You can share text, images, video, live video, stories, groups. Lots of people pick up news from Facebook. It's very widely used, and I'm sure even if you're not using it yet, you're familiar with it. Twitter, again, you can share text, images, video. Very good for news, and a lot of journalists use it, and a lot of journalists use it to find news. So it's good if you can be on Twitter. It's a good way to share your stories. A lot of academics use it, and universities encourage their academics to use Twitter to share stories, business, and it's very good for real-time events. So if you want to just share a short message about something that's happening in the moment, again, really good for Open Studios. You just share something about what's happening there and then. It's really good for that. YouTube, I'm sure you're all familiar with, video sharing platform. It's also the second largest search engine after Google, which is a bit of a surprise. A lot of people use it to search for stuff. LinkedIn is usually for professionals. It started off as really just a glorified CV and contact book, but now you can post articles and share news through LinkedIn. And Instagram, which is very popular with artists, because there's a big focus on visuals. So if you're not so good with words, Instagram is the kind of thing that you might be attracted to. You can also share words as well, but the focus is on photos and video. And again, you can do live video. Now, I don't have time in this session to go into detail of how to create an account. But what I'm going to do is just share with you the links in the chat about how you can do that, because they all have their own really good guides. I mean, the social media platforms want you to be posting. They want you to open up accounts, so they do make it easy, and they've got really good instructions, very easy to follow. So if you're thinking of starting up an account and you don't already have one, then I would suggest using those guides that I've just posted links to in the chat. Just to give you a flavour of the other things, which I'm not going to be talking about so much today, but just in case you've heard of them and wonder what they are. Vimeo is also for video sharing along the lines of YouTube. A lot of artists prefer it because you tend to get better quality video than you do with YouTube. So a lot of artists prefer it, but their videos wouldn't rank quite so high in your searches on Google or other search engines if you shared it on Vimeo. So there's pros and cons there. WhatsApp, a lot of businesses are using it to communicate with customers. Snapchat, a lot of young users. There people like sharing behind the scenes videos. A lot of influencers use it. Pinterest, again, another one which is very image focused. It's basically a collection of images. Word of warning with Pinterest is that there have been issues over the copyright. Once something's posted on Pinterest, there's some debate about copyrights, and if you're an artist sharing images of your work, you might want to be careful of that. TikTok, I mentioned because you've probably heard about it in the news recently. It's a music video social network. People get music on there and lip sync their videos. Having said that, it's not just about that. People are sharing different videos on TikTok. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think it's going to be at the top of the list of things to do for most of you right at the moment. But these things can always change. That's the thing about digital marketing. Social media is always changing. The Facebook years ago, Facebook was just for young people, and we now know that there's a much broader range of people using it. So that's sort of an introduction to social media. Assuming you've got your accounts, just a little thought about the things that you might want to be sharing. Photos is a really obvious one for artists, and I'm going to talk some more about photos in a moment. Video, again, is really good because people like video. It's likely to get more engagement. And again, the same with live video, and I'll talk some more about that. Text, don't be afraid of sharing text. I think when the focus is on the visual, there's a tendency for people to draw away from adding text. When people often just need a bit of context, they need to know, what is this a picture of? What's going on here? Don't assume that your audience know you and know what's happening. So I would always urge you to make sure that you do say something about the visuals that you're sharing, so that people understand. And also it's a good opportunity to mention important things. So obviously this training is leading up to Open Studio, so it's a good example that you might want to, if you share an image, say that you're taking part in Open Studios, perhaps include a link to Open Studios, mention the Somerset artworks in social media with the @ symbol, so that it links to them. If you mention Somerset artworks, they will know that you've mentioned them, and that increases the chances that they might share the content that you're sharing. Obviously they can't share everything that everyone's doing, but if you don't mention them, they won't know that you're doing it. So always give them a mention. And also it links it so that people who are looking for something during Open Studios will be able to see that as well. I forgot to ask Zoe at the beginning whether there's going to be a hashtag, but we can talk about that later. Events, so you can add events to your social media, and stories. So Facebook and Instagram particularly are doing these stories, which are the things that you see at the top. And the idea is that it's a kind of more newsy thing. It's only there for a short length of time. You can add graphics and all sorts of different things to show people what you're up to. So moving on to photos. If any of you were at the session that I did last week, I talked about photos, and we had a number of questions. So I'm going to, there'll be a bit of repetition, but hopefully if you attended the last session, that will be helpful, because I think people still had some questions about that. So I'll go over some of those again and add in some new information. So what makes a good publicity photo? And the three things that I would say are people. So you're sharing your artwork, and you might sometimes just want to share images of the artwork, particularly if it's something new. And there are occasions where you want to share just the artwork. But very often it's much better to have a person in the picture. People relate to people, and it's that engagement with another person that makes it interesting. The reason people like Open Studios is because they're interested in the artwork, but they're also interested in the artist. They're interested in you. They want to meet you. They want to know what you're doing. So people is really good to include. Some action. I don't mean it doesn't have to be, major action, but preferably doing something. It could be that you're maybe just looking at your artwork. So if you and your artwork, I'm just looking to see if I've got some artwork handy. So I've got this artwork here. It's this bowl. And if I'm taking a photograph of it, maybe not me smiling with it, but maybe me looking at it is a bit more interesting, and engaging with it, touching it. So if you're some sort of action, and action is a loose term, but something going on. Unusual settings make people notice. So maybe if you've been influenced by something during lockdown, as I imagine a lot of people have, maybe you've been painting in your garden during lockdown, you might want a photograph of you painting in your garden. I mean, your garden's not that unusual, but it's not an art gallery. It's a bit more unusual than people might be expecting. If you've been gathering materials on the beach, then you might want a photograph of you on the beach. Something, if you've been inspired by historic buildings, then you might want to have a photograph of you in that setting. So something a bit more unusual than just you in your studio or you in your living room. Now, some of the things to think about when we're looking at how to take photographs. Lighting. So you're likely to get better light if you're outside, if you've got daylight, and the better lit the photos are, the better quality and the better photos you're going to get. If possible, the light source should be behind the thing that is behind the photographer, so that it's shining onto the thing that's being photographed. So if someone's taking a photograph of you with your artwork, don't stand in front of a window, because you'll appear very dark in contrast to the window behind you. So try and make sure that the light source is falling onto the thing that you want to be photographed. It's not always possible to be photographed outside. So if it's inside, try and make sure that you get a good light source. It could be that you're taking photographs with your phone, and phones take really good photos these days. So if you've got your phone there and you're taking a photo, there is a little light on it, you can use a flash. What you might also want to think about is if you've got a friend with you who also has a phone, get them to shine the light, use the torch from their phone to shine it onto the thing that you're taking the image of. So try and make sure that the thing that you're focusing on is as well lit as possible. Composition. So what do you want to be in the picture? And have a think really carefully about what are the elements that you need. I'll talk about a bit more about keeping it simple, but don't try and make sure that the things that you want to include are the only things in that composition. And the rule of thirds is a really useful one, which I'm sure as artists you're aware of. It also applies to photography. So most phones, you can get a grid on your screen, which divides it like this into 9. So you have lines running across. And the most interesting points are the intersections of where those lines are. So if you can try and make sure that the subject is in that intersection, then that will really help with your composition. So if you don't know where that is, if you've got an iPhone, if you go to settings and choose photos and camera and switch the grid on. If you've got a Samsung Galaxy, for instance, if you go to settings, you can scroll down and switch to the grid. So we've talked about the composition and what's in your photograph. Think about the background. If it's a background that you're used to seeing, it's very easy to not notice it when you're taking a photograph. Think about what you don't want in the picture. So if there's lots of stuff in the background, it's going to mean that subject doesn't really stand out and attract people. So try and make sure that there's not lots of irrelevant stuff in the background. But I will show you a nice photo with clutter, but it's relevant clutter, and we'll come to that later. But generally, if your background is uncluttered, you're probably going to get a better photograph that'll ping in social media. And another thing to think about is that when you're sharing on social media is that the photo is likely to be quite small. So you don't want there to be too many different things going on in the photo. So keep it simple, keep the composition as simple as possible so that people can focus on the subject. And when I say focus, I mean but literally focus. So if you're using your phone, if you've got a camera, I'm sure you know how to use it and you know how to focus. If you're using your phone and you're not a photographer, generally with most phones, if you tap on the screen when you're taking a photo, usually a little square or something will appear, and you tap on the screen and that will lock the focus on the thing that you want to on the subject. You can also use that for exposure. So think about the exposure. If you tap on the screen, it should you should be able to see the difference. And a really good way to experiment is maybe to hold your phone up against the light, so you've got a bright thing and a dark thing in the frame, and just try tapping on it and seeing how the exposure might change when you do that. It's good to have interesting angles. I mentioned unusual settings. Good to have an interesting angle. The best angle might not just be at standard eye level. It might be worth bending down, or it might be worth going up. If you've got a lot of interesting things going on in your studio, you might want to have a camera high up so you can show what's happening. Behind the scenes of the artist working, people really like to see behind the scenes. I think as an artist, you might underestimate the value of this. But as I said before, they're interested in you as an artist, and they want to connect with you. So if they can see what you're doing behind the scenes, if they can see you working, that's really going to add interest for them. I just mentioned product shots as well, because it might be that if you're selling your work through online sales, or taking shots where you just want the image of the artwork, then that probably is going to be a very plain background, maybe a white plain background. A good way to do that is to get a sheet and drape it so that you've got the plain background. And try and get diffuse lighting so that you've got even lighting over the product, and take a very simple shot. If you're taking an image of your work, if your work is framed, then it's always worth taking an image of it before it goes to the framers. The frame adds complication, but particularly the glass will make it more difficult to get a good image. So I have before arrived at the framers, remembered I haven't taken an image of the work, and taken it into the framers and photographed it there and then. So always worth getting images of your work before you get it framed. I mentioned interesting angles. This is very simple picture, and it's just some artwork displayed as a slightly different angle. It's seen from above. These are on the floor. You can see them from above. It just, this nice arrangement adds a bit of interest. This is a photo of some work by Amanda Lynch, who was part of the Eton Studios last year. This is one of her pieces of artwork. It's photographed in the exhibition. That's where it was in the exhibition when it was photographed. That looks great, but I personally think that it looks much nicer when we've got a photograph of the artist with her work. Again, instantly you can see that's the person who made the work. You make some sort of connection, and it makes it more interesting. This is an image of some prints, and this is Mark Leahy, who's one of the artists, and just nicely framed, casual shot of him in the gap that was left by one of the images. So just something slightly quirky to draw your eye in. And I mentioned action. This isn't major action, but this is Lottie Scott, who took part in the festival last year with her artwork. And she's just, as I demonstrated with the bowl earlier, just touching, doing the final touches to the artwork, just engaging with it. It's amazing what a difference it makes if you're touching the artwork. It makes that connection for people. Nice behind the scenes shots, getting ready for an exhibition. Again, it's just the sort of things that people like to see. They don't necessarily want everything polished. Nice one of two people putting up their images. Notes and jottings. People love to see your inspiration. They love to see the little bits of things that you probably just think are rubbish. But just you're already looking in and reading and thinking, I wonder what that artist was thinking about when they wrote that. Just those little details of things, really nice to share on social media. So have a look around your studio or wherever you work and just notice the little things. If somebody else comes into your studio, have a look at what they engage with. It's not always just the work itself, it's all those other things that inspire you and that you use in your work. I mentioned keeping backgrounds uncluttered. This is the opposite of that, but this is an artist in her studio working, and again it's really nice because there is a cluttered background, but it's a relevant cluttered background. You can see all these things that she's working with, all the things on the shelf and some pictures on the wall, and you can see her working as well. And it's those kinds of images. They don't have to be really clever. It's just particularly when you're sharing on social media, people are used to a whole range of quality of photos. Of course, it's great if you can get brilliant photos, but it's not essential. It's just nice to think about a few things and share something engaging with people. I mentioned about showing off your work and whether you're going to have a product shot, but this is showing the art in situ. So if someone was going to buy it, this is what it might look like when it's on their wall. So this is the kind of image that might be good to show that, as opposed to the unframed, unglazed version. Again, another with reference to the backgrounds, have a think about what the background looks like. This quilt wasn't hanging in the background until the artist had a think about what might make it more interesting and less cluttered, and also to make a connection with what she's doing. So she's making a part of a quilt, and you can see what she's doing. She's actively doing it, she's engaging with the photographer, and you can see the results in the background. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to be sharing with you some information about images and size of image and how to share them. I'm going to talk about simple videos for sharing on social media. I'm going to talk about how to get started on social media, and then we're going to look at scheduling posts and how to do lives. And just to talk quickly about image size. So if you're sharing on social media, you probably want your images to be a bit smaller. So maybe 500 kilobytes, and you can get away with quite a lot less as well. So they don't need to be big. This is for a still image. They don't need to be necessarily be that big to share on social media. But if you're sending them for print, to print media, or if you're sending it for a magazine or even just a news website, then you probably do want to send a bigger one. They can always make it smaller if they need to, and you probably want it to be 1 to 2 megabytes and over 1,000 pixels wide, preferably probably sort of 3,000-4,000 pixels wide. If you're sharing your videos, I always say keep them short. Not everybody agrees with this. And certainly Facebook saying that there's more engagement if videos are longer. But I think it depends on what have you got to say. So if you have got a lot to say and it's something that people are going to be really interested in, then yes, fine, make a long video. Or it might be that you're going to do a Facebook Live and you're just going to switch the camera on and people can drop in and out as you're making something when, you know, anytime they want to. That's fine. But if you really want to say something and you want people to listen to the whole thing, then I would say keep your videos short, you know, maybe 1, 2, 3 minutes. So again, I mentioned these in the last workshop. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but I think the video of the last workshop is still available. So if you want to know a little bit more, you should be able to go back and have a look at that one. Video might sound a bit scary. If video doesn't sound scary, Richard from Somerset Film did a really interesting workshop about how you can make videos using your phone and edit them on your laptop. If you just want something, if you don't feel you've got any editing skills, but you maybe got a good eye, you can do a few nice clips. You can get some really good results with a couple of apps that it's worth having a look at. Quick is available on iOS and Android. So iOS is the operating system for Apple iPhones, and Android is all the others. So it's available on both. That little picture shows you what the icon is for it, and you can simply drop a few images, either still and or video, into it, and it will make your video for you. It will choose the most interesting parts of your video. It'll edit them together, and you've got a nice little video that you can share on social media. It's not necessarily very refined, but you can go in and make adjustments and refine it. It'll put music in if you want to. Really nice little app for doing something quickly to share and to make your video look a bit more interesting. Apple Clips is only available, as it suggests, on iPhones, and it does a similar sort of job. And Pick, Play, Post, again available on both. And you can make a simple video. You can do it gives you different formats, so you can maybe have 4 images on the same screen showing different things. You could have a video of you explaining. Someone mentioned, I think it was Amanda, mentioned how-to videos. You could maybe have your face talking to the camera explaining how to do something, and another shot of your hands doing it, so that people can see your hands and your face at the same time. So a few nice apps, and definitely worth exploring if you'd like to go a bit further with video. So getting started on social media, I shared earlier the getting started guides, and all of the social media platforms will have them. So I would suggest if you've not got your social media account set up, or if you're not quite sure about how you're using them and what you're doing, they do all have really good guides, and are definitely worth having a look at those and using them. Practice, definitely recommend practicing. If you're not sure about what you're doing, when I first started using social media, I would sometimes, I remember when Twitter first started, I set up a Twitter account about chocolate, and tweeted about chocolate. It didn't matter professionally if I got anything wrong. It was a good way to experiment and engage and interact with other people without it really mattering. And it helped me to get the hang of it. So you might want to do it anonymously, or you might just feel confident enough to share as you are, but practice and start sharing things. If you're going to be doing lives, and we'll talk about those in a second, definitely worth practicing. And experiment a bit. Do be a bit adventurous. Try something a little bit different, and just have a go. Post regularly. Now, people often say, well, how often do I need to post? It doesn't have to be several times a day. It doesn't even have to be every day. Post when you've got something to say, but try and make sure that it is regular, and you don't leave it for months and months before you say something. So if you're working up to open studios, you should really be posting now, so that people get used to hearing from you and you get a bit of a profile. And you can schedule your posts for regular content. So if you think that you actually what you want to do is say something every day between now and Open Studios starting, you might want to schedule some of those posts at the beginning of the week when you've set aside some time to do that, so that you're saying something every day. It doesn't have to be much. It's just about pinging in so that people see that you're there and notice you. So I'm just going to show you how to schedule a post on Facebook. So this is where the publishing tools are. And you can see how you just post it like any post. So this is me posting yesterday, saying how much I was looking forward to meeting you all. This is an @ you can see how you use an @ so I'm mentioning Somerset Artworks with the @ sign. The @ doesn't appear, but you can see that it's sort of greyed out or pale blue, and you know that that's the @ and that's the link to them. And then I've put in the link, and it's automatically come up with that photo and the link to the training. And then you can put in when you're going to schedule it. You can change the time. You decide when it's going to be. I was just scheduling it. I was just doing this yesterday as a demonstration, so I was just scheduling it for later in the day. And then you click schedule, and it's as simple as that. That's all you have to do. So very straightforward, easy way to schedule something in advance. If you want to schedule with for Twitter, I use TweetDeck. There's a few other platforms. If you use TweetDeck, it's a nice way to schedule. It's also good if you happen to use a lot of different social media accounts. So you can see here, these are some of the social media accounts that I tweet for. This one's myself, and then there's other people that I tweet for. And what you can do is schedule in a very similar way to Facebook. You can schedule, so you write your tweet as for Facebook, you write something similar. Again, this is me tweeting yesterday, so that you could see how to schedule. Again, someone asked about the @. It's the same principle as Facebook. You can @ mention somebody, so you can @ mention Somerset Artworks, and then you can schedule the post in the same way. You can add photographs, you can add links, and schedule it for whenever you want into the future. It doesn't have to be just that day. It could be any time. You could do a whole week. You could do quite a long period of time if you want to. So really easy way to do a number of things at once. I know if you're sharing on social media, if you're not used to doing it regularly, it takes the thought process to log in, go in, start doing it. So once you're in there, you might as well do a few while you're there. That's a really good way to do it. So lives. And I really think that Open Studios being digital is a great opportunity to use lives. People are looking for different ways to engage online. And there's something really engaging about lives. So this is image of a writer called Natalie McGrath, who I did a whole load of lives for on her Facebook page, interviews with different people. It's a great way to engage. People like the sort of the urgency of a live and the authenticity of a live, and that might be a bit scary, but maybe it's not as scary as having to edit afterwards. And it is a really good way to connect with your audience. The audience can ask questions while you're doing it during Open Studios. They can type in their questions and ask you as you go, which is a good way to engage with the audience. So it might be that you're creating your work during the live. You could be talking about the work that you're creating. You might have a guest. You can have a guest who is remote, or obviously in person, but you can have a remote guest. And it could be that you chat with them or they interview you about your work. And you can keep the video for use later. It's really interesting that even after the event, people like the fact that something was live and they missed it and they want to go back and see it. So even though not everyone is watching it live, they like the fact that it was live. So really good to share in the moment. And you can, social media platforms often prioritize live content. So we were talking about the algorithm earlier. It often, most of the platforms, if you've got live content, they like that and people are more likely to see you. You can stream to more than one platform at the same time if you want to get a bit more sophisticated. There's a number of platforms that do that. StreamYard is one of them. They have a free option and a paid option, which gives you more flexibility. You can also, as we're doing at the moment, you can live stream to Facebook or YouTube using Zoom. Obviously, everyone's used to using Zoom because you're all here. If you're comfortable with that, you might find that that's an easier way to stream to Facebook. You might feel happier with that way of doing it. So I've got some instructions of how to do that, which I'll just share with you in the chat. And while I'm doing that, I would say that it is really important to advertise in advance that you're going to be doing this. So if you're going to be doing a live, it might be the first time, you maybe don't want to shout about it, you just want to test it without anybody watching. But when you're doing them for real, do let people know. So if you're doing it during Open Studios, do a countdown, let people know it's going to be happening, let them know days in advance, a few days in advance, an hour in advance, 5 minutes advance, it's coming, I'm going to be doing this. Really good to give people lots of notice so that they're likely to see it and pick it up. So just to show you how simple it is to do that, I'm just going to rejig my screen slightly. 1 second. There we go. So this is Facebook. This is what it looks like. You click on those dots. You go to live video, takes you there. You decide where you're going to share it. So are you going to share it on your own profile, or are you going to share it to a page you manage? If you've got an artist page, that might be where you're going to share it. And that's it. As you can see, you click the go live button and you're off. It is as simple as that. They make it simple for a reason, so that it's easy for you to do. And then just to show you on Instagram, I just need to make my screen a bit bigger. So this is my Instagram. And I'll just go back. What you need to do is to tap the camera at the top. And that takes you there. You can choose live, and there we are with an Instagram live, and it's as easy as that. I would suggest that if you're going to be doing lives, that you maybe think about investing in a tripod. unless you've got somebody to hold the phone for you. But even if you have, it's really good to have a tripod. If you've got a steady image, it creates a much better impression, and it forgives a lot of other things. You can buy a little mount. If you're using your phone, you buy a little mount that goes around your phone and will attach to a tripod. If you haven't got a tripod, try and make sure that your phone is steady somewhere. Maybe if it's not actually attached to a tripod, you might want to get somebody to hold it just to make sure it's okay. But try and make sure that your phone is as steady as it can be, just so that it creates a better impression. And like I say, my advice certainly when you start would be to keep them short. Have a go, just test them out, keep them short, see what they look like, go back and look at them, practice, and see where you get to. And I think you'll be surprised how many people are interested when you start going live.